If you want to hear Shane Webke chat about his football career, then don't listen to this interview. I'm chatting with Shane today about everything else except football. Shane's story is filled with lessons about motivation, teamwork, and finding a way through some of the most challenging times. He tells me about the woman who changed his life and the mistakes that have humbled him. I hope you enjoy listening to Shane's story. Shane, thank you so much for...
It's a pleasure.
I really do appreciate it. And it was funny because we were at Warwick and you were speaking there, and I went along to the dinner and I thought, oh, this is just going to be about footy. But I really loved your speech, and I was taking notes on my phone. And
now I am flattered, but anyway.
No, it was really interesting. And then I thought, now I've got to work up the courage to go and ask him if he'll come, if he'll let me talk to him for Life Journey. And I went to get drinks, and I literally
That's right.
You were just right there, so I couldn't miss the opportunity. So.
And in that environment, under those circumstances, it's very hard to say no. So I'm here.
Nah, well, thank you. And you did mention all the money that I'm paying you.
Yeah,
so
no, that's right. Because
big help.
It was so lucrative. I couldn't say no. No, it's not.
Drink your water.
Yeah, no. Oh, okay. There's payment right there.
Yeah.
Perfect.
The more you drink, the more you get paid.
I get it.
Yeah,
that works.
Yeah, but and I guess if anybody's thinking this is going to be an interview about footy,
well, I hope it's wrong. I hope it's not, though.
Wrong. No, it's not.
I talk a lot about footy, and I'm happy to talk about something else. Yeah.
I know. I'm not a footy fan.
I love footy, though.
I know you do. Yes, yeah, and I do enjoy watching good footy, but I'm not glued to it.
Maybe you're making that up, but anyway, that's fine.
Well, sometimes I don't have a choice because I have two men in the
house. Yeah.
And it just...
And we are the dominant species and stuff. Yeah, stuff like that.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
But anyway, I want to ask firstly about you growing up and what shaped your values, and because I think things that happen to us in childhood become, in a way, shape who we become later on in life. So what were some of the things that shaped who you became?
Well, I think you're 100% right. I think we are a product of what we grow up in. And I don't think anyone escapes that. And it's good and bad.
Yeah.
If you're lucky enough to have good parents or great parents like I did, well, you're lucky. Doesn't mean they were perfect, because they weren't. Doesn't mean we didn't have problems. Doesn't mean we didn't have hardship. We had all those things. But when I think, and this is why I'll always be grateful I had the upbringing that I did. I had a mum and dad who, let's say, so I'm 52. So when I was growing up, in the years that I can remember, Australia changed into a place with high interest rates and high fuel prices. And people who lived through that know exactly what's, talking about through the 80s, exactly what went on. It was an incredibly tough time. And my mum and dad really, really felt that. And so we grew up in a little place called Leeburn. My dad, who had a tough enough past and all the rest of it, but always wanted to be on the land, probably never achieved it the way that he wanted to. And then in the fledgling stages of that, the world changes, and suddenly our farm wasn't viable anymore. He had to go away and work, had his old trade, which was, he'd been in the Navy, and so he was a marine engineer, which meant the jobs for that were always offshore and somewhere else and all the rest of it. So he spent a lot of time away from us. But I guess the resounding thing about my childhood, and we had all the important stuff, right? We had parents who loved us, warm beds and full stomachs. You actually don't need more than that. Our world today has decided that we do, but we don't. But we had all of that. But it doesn't mean like in a tough upbringing, because we didn't have any of the material stuff. But I had a mum and dad who taught me how to work. And that has been the greatest gift, like amongst other things, but that has been the greatest gift that I got from them. And people talk about work ethic, right? And in the context of when you're well rewarded for your efforts and work, well, you can see how well people might take to work ethic. But I saw my mother and father work to the end of every day and all the rest of it to survive. Not to get ahead, not for financial reward, for financial survival. It's a very different thing. And that was etched into me, and the hardships that went with it and all the rest of it. And what that gives you is a wonderful perspective. Nothing more, nothing less. Like my view on what's tough is very different to somebody else who grew up in a world where those things didn't exist. Today's world wants to talk about resilience all the time. You get resilience from going through tough things. No other way. You can't be taught resilience. It doesn't happen like that. My children, God bless them, love them to death. They can never have the resilience I've got because they never had to go through the things that I did. And I didn't want them to do that. But did I do them a favour? No, I didn't. But that's impossible to think any differently to that. That's just how it. But the other thing, I guess, work ethic, but also humility, and in many ways being happy with what you got. You know, my dad was very good at that. He didn't have a lot, but he never seemed to worry about that too much. All those things just make a bit of balance, I think, and I'll be forever grateful that they were my mum and dad.
You lost your dad when you were 18, didn't you, in an accident? So do you mind sharing a little bit about that?
No.
So affected you?
Yeah, no, it's a very long story.
Yeah.
But basically, Dad was killed in an horrendous industrial accident, and it was to say the least, you know, an awful thing. Which lose anyone at any age, it's tough. But the way that my father was killed was just, mind-boggling, awful. And I guess it happened at a point in my life, like, it's funny. I think about it when I reflect on it now. I was just moving into life, really, and just going into my footy career. Fledgling stages of it were happening and all the rest of it. And I wasn't doing too good a job of that, to be honest. That's another story. I sort of was an accidental footballer. I'd fallen into it. That wasn't particularly working out, and all of a sudden this happens. And it's funny, a lot of things have shaped my life, but it's always about perspective, right? And my perspective overnight changed when I lost Dad, because everything that I ever thought was normal, and, you know, I got mum, I got dad, got where I grew up, it all changed. So it forces you to think very differently, and it changed my life. As anyone who's been through it will tell you, it changes your life. And not to the point where suddenly, I want to become a footballer, you know, so that Dad might be able to see it somewhere and all that. My father was not like that, not 1 inch like that. So that would have been false in his eyes. And so it wasn't a case of the profound effect of it. It was more about the fact that I suddenly knew that people died. I'd lost grandparents and that, but we live, we die. That's normal. But dying in between isn't normal. That's the bit that humans have the greatest difficulty with. And so as a result of Dad going the way he did, it just made me different, made me grow up. I had to grow up. I went from, you know, I was 18 and a half, almost 19 years old, or whatever it was. And all of a sudden, what I thought was going to be my life, all I ever wanted to do was be on the land. And we never quite got there. And so I said about my dad's dream and all the rest of it. And circumstance, lack of this, lack of that, whatever it was, meant that we had never really become viable in terms of an agricultural production, if you like. And I just dreamt that we could be that. And all my life at school, look, I worked hard at school and everything, not for any other reason than I wanted to help Dad and Mum, and we build a property and do this. Typical country kid, see, like you get infected by that. And that's what I wanted. And so when Dad was killed, it was all lost. And I was lost as a result of that. It threw me into a chasm, if you like, that I didn't think there was a way out of.
So when I listened to you at Warwick, you talked a lot about your mum and her courage and strength, and I just loved that. And so tell me about your mum and what courage, I guess, she showed through that time, particularly to help you through, and how did you help yourself to get through it? But
so my mum, and that's why you heard me talk about it, and I always talk about it, and she'd hate it. She would hate it because it's just not her. My mum was tough our whole lives. Like when things were tough, my dad couldn't handle it. My mum did, and she always did. And things I'm not going to talk about today, but things about our family and things, we didn't have a perfect existence. My father hadn't come from a perfect existence, so nothing about the way we did things was perfect. But my mum was the one constant, and her strength is astounding, like astounding. When my father was killed, and I was lost, she was lost, my brother was lost, everyone's lost, But mum's the one who finds a way to help us, right? And so I went to my mother, because footy were very good. The Broncos and Wayne Bennett were magnificent. They said, no, you take as long as you like and all the rest of it. And I just fell into a typical country kid's dilemma, if you like, drinking too much, trying to get through something, don't understand anything, and just basically aimless. And anyway, I had some very good friends of my dad's who helped me in a very tough way, because they were that sort of people, right? And they sort of made me think that, got to stop this silliness. So I went to Mum and I said, Mum, I'm not going back to Brisbane to play footy because I don't want to. I said, I'm not liking it and this and that and all this. I said, I'm going to come home, I'm going to run the farm, I'm going to do this and all that. Now, my father was only at this job because we were no longer viable. And that was, and he was infinitely more capable than me. So me thinking that I could go back home and run it was stupid. And my mum knew it, but I didn't. And so we sat down and had this conversation, some weeks, maybe a month after Dad's death. And I said, Mum, I want to stay home and run the farm. And she said, no, I don't think that sounds like a good idea. And I said, Mum, I think it's a great idea. And she goes, no, it's not. I said, yes, it is. Anyway, which is normal with mother and son, or parent and child, unless it's in those circumstances. Anyway, she said, well, she ended it. She said, you can do whatever you like, but you won't be doing it here. And
That's tough.
It was tough.
Yeah.
It was proper tough.
On her too,
and
because she probably wanted nothing more.
Yeah, well, I got the shits, and I decided, well, okay, bug yeah. And I'm embarrassed to even say that, because no, my mum. Anyway, doesn't matter. It's the other great thing about my mum. She always forgives us for our transgression. She's great. Anyway, so I went back to Brisbane. It didn't take me long, and didn't take us long to sort that out. There was no problem. Years later, she told me, and this always gets me a bit rattled. She said, when you came to me with that, I had nothing. I had debt. I had no way forward. All I wanted you to do was stay. But she said, I knew I couldn't let you do that, because one day the question would come, what if? She said, I wasn't prepared to let you do that. So that's why I think so much of her. Because at the time, and I guess you could argue that's what parents should do, but parents don't often are able or whatnot. But my mum found it, right?
Yeah.
And so the evidence is there, and that's what she said to me. And she put us first at the most difficult time of her life. She always put us first. And if I've got a hero in my life, it's her. Because, and this is the other thing, right? So, okay, you think, okay, well, what a admirable and noble thing to do. And we could leave the story there, and Mum went on and found a way and all the rest of it. But she did better than that. She did far better than that. So my mum was always an intelligent person, but been out of the workforce for a long, long time. Knew she had to go back to work because they simply didn't have anything. And so Mum went to, and not a proud woman, so, and nor should you need to not be proud to go and do a manual task, but she no problems at all. She went chipping weeds and cotton, right? Because we're around a cotton area, and actually, no, sorry, it wasn't that, chipping weeds in vegetable market gardens, right?
Oh, yeah.
A lot of them around us. She couldn't continue that because she's Nordic background, so she got very fair skin, skin cancer. And she'd already had a history of sun earlier in her life when we didn't know about these things. And so the doctor just said to her simply, you keep doing this job, it'll kill you. And so Mum couldn't do that. She said, okay, what can I do? So she went to the primary school where I grew up because it was the cleanest job there. And again, Mum not being too proud, thinking herself above something like that, she said, I'll go and do that. So she cleaned one day. And anyway, one day, one of the teacher aides was crook and wasn't at work. And the principal at the time, whoever it was, knew my mum and knew that she was intelligent and all the rest of it, and said, Vicky, would you come up and give us a hand? And she said, oh, yeah, I'll do that. Fell in love with it. Anyway, long story short, she retired then after 20 years. And this is some time ago now, but she went through 20 odd years of the education system. She's about a semester away from being a primary school teacher when she finished, but she just ran out of steam. She had enough, but totally rebuilt her life. Totally. And to this day, she lives on our farm now. So she lives in and looks after stuff for me. She's
still looking after you.
Exactly. But she is, and she's old school person too. So my dad was her husband, and that part of her life finished when he died. So she's been by herself for 33 years. And I'm sure she has tough days, but she doesn't talk about it. And she's been the most practical, pragmatic, toughest person I've ever known. And has dealt with all the stuff. And it's not just what happened to my dad. She lost her own father early. She lost her brother very early. And then her mother came up to live closer to us. And that ushered in a very good period of her life. And then Nan got pancreatic cancer and died. And so she's dealt with blow after blow after blow. Like, for a 20-odd year period, there was every 5 years someone died who was of enormous significance to her. And she got through all of that. And today, you wouldn't know it. And she I hope she doesn't find this somewhere. But anyway, she sees this, she won't like it. But it's true, so I don't care.
And society, for her to go from cleaning into the schoolroom, gosh, no one could do that now because where's your blue card?
Yeah.
Like, society's changed so much.
Wouldn't allow that. That's
right. So how many good people have missed out on doing things like that could have contributed to society? But now, Shane, everybody knows how great you are.
Oh well, not more than me. I can tell you the up version of it. But
well, we're not going to go there because I don't want to make his. I want you to be able to walk out of this room.
Yes.
But I want to know about some of your failures and what you've learned through those failures, because you said before.
How long have we got? Yeah, failures. All the normal stuff, I suppose. I've never had profound failure, like in terms of, I got a lot of stuff wrong. We all get stuff wrong. I think about my children sometimes, who are just magnificent because of their mother.
How old are they?
So they're now 21, 23 and 25. Yeah, and they're wonderful. And they're so well adjusted. They're good kids. You know why? Because they had their mum all the time. We were lucky enough that we could make the decision that she could stay home with them. And I dads are dads, right? But we're not mothers. Mothers and children, I mean, you birth them. You have that thing with them, right? Incredibly important, I think, a mother's role, as is a father's role, but just not, a mother around all the time is invaluable, I reckon, and more valuable than having a dad around all the time. I'm sorry, but I know that's not a popular way to think, but I just think mothers play such a vital, important role in a child's development, because you have something with them that the dads can't. I just think that my life, and many men would say this, the way that things unfolded and the things I had to do, it took me away from them too often. But big deal. Like, my father once went away for 2 years. I saw him once in 2 years. Now, I don't sit here today and have some great cataclysmic problem with that. I think about it in the practical way that at the time it killed me. But now I know why he did it. I can accept that and live with it and all the rest of it. So this is not me suggesting that I see it as profound failure, that I was away too often. I was away too often. But my kids understand it. They're not, they're not scarred by it. But I always think that I probably, at times, could have made a decision here and there, not all the time, that maybe could have taken me back to them a bit quicker than I got there. But then I got distracted by other things and all the rest of it. So
it's easy to look back, though.
It is.
Think, I should have done this.
Yeah, exactly. I made the usual errors that people do, financial ones, and had to live with some dire consequences. I finished playing footy, I was on the point of bankruptcy.
Really?
Because I'd made some really, really bad business decisions. which happened to be the best thing that ever happened to me, because I came in, I realised I knew what I'd done. I had a really good friend who helped me with it. I knew what I'd done, and he said, technically you're bankrupt right now, right here today. And I said, well, we're not doing that. I said, I can't, for a number of reasons, but not particularly because, my last year in my footy career was probably one of my biggest. I can't then be the bloke who's going broke. So I said, we're not doing that. And so it just ushered in a period of my life for a decade where I had to go flat out. And I got past the whole lot of it. But I wouldn't have been anywhere as sound as I am in a financial position, but also the way I think about things, were it not for that period. So that era, which almost cost me everything I earned playing footy, was the most profound effect on me in terms of my life moving forward, in my financial life at least, and my business decisions. So that was a big failure, ended up being the biggest success. And so I don't think, we're all human. We will make mistakes, and I haven't made my last ones. You're only stupid if you keep making the same one. And they're the people who go down. But you make them, you learn from them, strengthens us. Again, I always say life is all about perspective. And the only way you get perspective is if you're doing something. If you've never made a mistake, you've never done anything. So I always welcome those. I guess the thing that I've been lucky with, and that we all strive to, is that the errors that we make don't end us in terms of whether it be relationships, financially, whatever, that we recover from them, because they're the ones you can learn from. Some errors can't be gotten away from, and thankfully I've not made any of those.
I guess too, there's a lot to be said for the courage to come out and say what's wrong. I imagine that when you were going broke, that you reached out to people who had knowledge that could help you. But if you hadn't been brave enough to do that, then you would have probably been a lot worse.
Would have done.
Yeah.
And I tell you what made me wake up to that fact early in my life, and this has served me well my whole life now, from that day. When my father was killed, I talked about those mates of his that helped me. So I did what my group of mates would have done, and I was hurt, I was buggered, I was lost, so I got on the drink. And I can say that, that was the culture that we were in. Anyway, my biggest fear in those years, in those weeks post my father's death, and I'm pretty sure most people would go through some of this, I had this dreadful fear that he would be forgotten and that I would forget him. And it was like he would never be around. And what I was trying to do is hold on to anything that reminded me of him so he could still stay. But he was gone. And I think that's a natural thing. I think everybody loses someone, goes through that. Let's just try and hold on them. But at some point you realise they're gone and they'll come back. So what my way of doing that was his friends, like his mates, our neighbours. And there's probably 3 of them. And they were very, very close to that. And they were good people, Anyway, they all enjoyed a beer. So I fell in this little habit in the weeks after my father's death that I'd go around to their places and I'd get on the drink and everything. But I was only young, and these fellas were hard old country blokes, right? But I couldn't help myself. I'd start talking to them and I'd be crying about Dad, right? And I'd be saying this and saying that. And that for 2 weeks this went on. And I'd have the first night one, second night another, third night another. Anyway, and I just couldn't help it. I couldn't help it. And these blokes, I thought, and they were hard men. And that I was sitting there as a young man, but they let me be till the 3rd week. I went to the first one, and I started, and he said, woo. He said, what would your dad expect? What would he really want from you? Would he want this? Anyway, he gave me a couple of hard truths, and I thought, not sure that I'm ready to hear this. So I went the next day, hoping to get a different message. But these fellas have been talking to each other. And they all gave me the same message, right?
Yeah.
But what that did, taught me a couple of things. Grief is poison. Problems are poison. And if you're the only one who's, like, if it's in you and you don't expel it, so my way of expelling the grief and the poison that was with that, I talked to these blokes and I cried from it was gone. And so in that 3 weeks, those fellas, and then when they resurrected me in terms of the hard message, it made me understand that I'd actually got rid of the most intense of the pain had gone, but it was only because I talked about it. It wasn't because I walked around and didn't say anything, it was all stoic and didn't cry and didn't do this. It was because I actually expelled it all. And it taught me the problems that you harbour by yourself are only yours. You share them, you get rid of them. And it also then from that day on, like if I had problems, I've got no issue. I will talk to someone. The moment something goes wrong with me, I find someone who is smarter than me and I ask them how I fix it. And when I say someone smarter than me, that doesn't mean, if a tractor of mine breaks down, I ring up someone who's smarter than me and ask them, rather than try sitting there, I think I can fix this myself. Now that's a very simple analogy, but if something really goes wrong in life, and as it does, I will seek someone out. And usually that for me would be a bloke like Wayne Bennett, who became like a father to me. I'd ring him and say, Wayne, what do I do with this? I'm stuffing this up, I'm getting this wrong and all the rest of it. Mate, tell me what to do. That is the greatest, out of something so painful, that was the greatest lesson I learned. That has set me free because I no longer, if I've got something going on, I will tell someone. Because what I think they may understand it, but don't particularly can look at it from the outside in. But from that experience when I was younger, allows me to know this. If something's in your head, i.e. the loss of someone important, or whatever it might be, and it's swirling around in your head, and you're the only person talking about it, right? i.e., that voice, we all got our own heads, and we visit things and talk about things, and if it's spinning around in your head, and you're the only input to it, well, guess what happens? Your perspective is completely gone, because the only one adding to a problem, and the negative voice from a negative voice is a double negative, and you just keep getting that. So if you can't or don't have the ability or can't do it, well then what happens is we get these people, like today's problems, but the problems that people have got today with things is astounding. We haven't learnt about how, I don't think, and I'm glad about how to properly communicate and move on. And that set of circumstances I just explained, it set me free for all time. And as hard as all of that was, I'll always be glad that was the case. Because from that day to this, which is 33 years since my father was killed, like I've not had some build up a problem or anything, because they never build up in me, because I always find a way to get someone to help me.
Do you think sometimes fear holds us back too, Shane, from you don't want to be embarrassed to tell somebody your problems, and that can be a block.
Completely.
Yeah.
So I'm saying about pride, right? Blokes particularly. Yeah. Women are different. You're smarter than us. Yeah. Always have been. Yeah. Hope wifey sees this one day.
I'll make sure she does.
Yeah, no, exactly. Men, we're terrible. We're terrible because we've got this thing, and this is probably a hangover from the caveman days where we get the food and provide for the family and all of that. We're shocking at it. Yet, the toughest blokes I know are the ones who can say it. The ones who can say, you know what, this is shit. I'm doing this badly. What do I do? They're the tough blokes. Yeah. And that's why I always, I get asked to talk to people all the time about different things, and I get asked to talk about mental health and all of this. I know nothing about mental health. I know about resilience. I know about resilience from the way I grew up, but I also know about problem solving from what happened to Dad. And I also know that a problem you have in your own head and you don't share that is a recipe for disaster. And this notion that and this is what stops people sharing their problems, is because, what will people think of me? There is not a person on this planet who is doing perfect. There's no such thing. Every single person on this earth has problems day to day, week to week, year to year. Every single one of them. So if you step outside your comfort zone and tell someone, oh God, this is happening to me, the other person's likely to say, you know what, that happened to me too. Because we're all the same. And it fascinates me, this fascinates me, this notion that people can give to themselves, which stops them being open, to think that, oh God, I couldn't say that out loud because what would they think of me? Which the truth is that everybody goes through it.
Yeah, yeah. What about teamwork, and not in a sports team sense, but in families and at work? There's always conflict, and there'll always be, particularly in workplaces, I guess, people that you just don't see eye to eye with. Or why do you think that happens, and how do you resolve that conflict in workplaces and in families?
That's a tough question.
Or, when you've been faced with it, is it communication or...
Well, any sort of team of any variety runs on its values and its rules. So people talk about culture. Culture is values and rules. So any sort of team, a sporting team, a work team, a family team, runs on what are our values. And the leaders within all of that are charged with and are responsible for upholding those values, beliefs, and rules. That's what culture is. And culture exists in everything. That's what you look at something, it's a measure of it, whatever the culture is that created, right? Whatever the rules and values and beliefs are. So my family, so we have certain beliefs the way things should be. It's my job and my wife's job, because we lead our kids, is to enforce all of that. And yes, that's never perfect, ever perfect. But they know that's where we stand, that's where we're always going to stand. And once you get through the toughest period of enforcing the fact that those are the rules and the values, they start to live them. Now that's what good culture is. And so I would say in my family, we don't have perfect culture, but we've got good culture. The Broncos sides that I played in had great culture, because we had rules, values and beliefs that our leaders made sure that we adhered to. And if you didn't, you needed to go away. So in a workplace, which is a bit harder, but it's still the same. So if you're running a workplace, you have an employee who just won't adhere to the culture of the business, that is, the rules, values and beliefs, and they won't change. If you don't get rid of them, they become cancer. And the world today's modern world wants to think that anyone can be turned around. Not true. Some people are what they are, and they're never going to fit into a certain regime. Sooner people accept that. And anyway, I say that quite a bit, and business leaders say to me, well, that's fine to say that, but we've got to find someone else. I said, that's fine, and you're right, but what is the cost of keeping the person with the crook attitude, which is infecting everybody else, up against being one short for a while? Immeasurable. So, problem solving, conflict resolution, all of those things isn't easy, and it's never going to be. And there's no amount of talking, there's no amount of people giving talks about leadership and culture and all those things that'll change that. Put simply, if you want to run a group of people in the same direction, you're running with a group of people who oftentimes are not in the same direction. Your job is to try and put all those personalities together, iron out the differences, and make people accept. This is what good team people are like. It's good team people understand. Just because I disagree doesn't mean it has to be my way. If we can, in any good team situation, work environment, whatever it is, if leadership properly do it and work out a direction and a well thought out scenario, not do as I say, it's more about working out and communicating. The other thing in all of this is consistent communication and consistency. Consistency in your messaging, consistency in what you're talking about. So I've only learned all of this. I learned all this because of the game of rugby league. And then I just have seen it forevermore in the businesses that I've been involved with myself personally, but also in hiring. And that doesn't mean I've always had it right. I know a bit about this because I've got it wrong so many times too. It's not easy. It's not easy, having a group of people do something together. It's just not easy because humans, we're funny creatures. We've got our own way of thinking. We've got all our own idiosyncrasies and all those things. To round all that up and ask people to all get on the same page isn't an easy thing to do. But if you get it right, it can be powerful.
That is really good advice. We're never going to get on with everybody. We're never going to see things the same way people, someone else might see them. So, Shane, what about motivation? So, I'm sure there's been times when you felt not very motivated, when you just had to go and do things. So how do you deal with that in your life when you don't feel like doing something, but you've got to, and or how do you motivate other people?
Motivation's a tricky one because for us to be motivated, you're looking at something down the track because we're all heading somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And I just always remind myself, because there's plenty of days, like all of us, plenty of days I just think, oh, not today. But discipline makes me go. And the payoff for discipline is the reward of where you're headed. That's what motivates me, because I've always been a motivated person. I always wanted to get out of the poverty of my youth. I wanted us to have a farm. I wanted to do this. I wanted to do that. I wanted to do that. So I've always been punching away. So I've always been a very motivated bloke. But what's the matter? Now think about this. Now this is, what if your motivation, and I think the world makes a mistake with this sometimes, what if your motivation is to get a simple 9-to-5 job, get married, have a couple of kids, and lead a simple life? Does that make that person any less motivated? I think the most noble of motivation is that, okay, this is going to be my life, and this is what I'm going to make it look like. I don't think that's wonderful. Other people are motivated to go and climb, Mount Everest, all sorts of things. So motivation looks very different depending on who you're talking to. And so my motivation has always been around, agriculture and stuff like that. And I love success. But what does success look like? That's also in the eye of the beholder. So things that I think have been successful for me, other people will look at it and think, oh, that didn't quite work out. But the way I look at it, it did. So motivation and success and all of those things, they also can be tricky things, but they're very much linked to the individual about where they're headed. And, you often hear it said about, people who have got a lack of motivation. Well, what does that mean? So someone who doesn't want to build a fortune, because we link too much to money now too, I think. But if you're motivated to, say, ride a bike around Australia, and you set out and you just rip into it, well, that's a wonderful achievement. It's a wonderful motivation. Not necessarily going to help you in your life, but you've set out to do something, you did it. I think it's inherent in humans that we want to do things. I don't think many, there's plenty of examples of humans that are not like that, but there are more that are, people just out to build their lives. So I think motivation is about where you're headed, what are you doing, and how you're going to get there. And that doesn't need to be climbing a mountain, doesn't need to be anything. It needs to be what you want. I think the biggest thing that destroys their motivation is perhaps setting the wrong goal, setting too high a goal, not knowing yourself. I've always known what I wanted, and it's very easy to be motivated when you know where you're going. Because then you just think, well, okay, that's where I'm headed, and this is what I've got to do to get there. And that's what, on the days that I don't feel like doing anything, I know on those worst days when it's really hard to get going and get motivated and go and do the tough things I've got to do, well, they're the days I know are the ones that aren't the stopgap, right? They're not the thing that stops me getting where I'm going. And so I just keep on going. And that then, the overarching thing of that is when you have discipline. When you have the discipline to understand that the only way where you're going to go is by getting out of bed and going there. And I'm lucky that's been bred into me in my life, really. And so I have that, but one without the other doesn't work.
And you talked about success. So what does success look like now in your life compared to when you were younger?
Hasn't changed. I just got more debt. What I always have wanted was to have a good family.
Yeah.
Like I was gonna have a family like most of us do, and I wanted them to be. I wanted first and foremost. That's the most important thing to me. Now, I do have a great family. I got a magnificent family. Doesn't mean they're perfect either, but they are great, and I feel proudest of that. If I'm proud about something, it's when someone says something to me, "Oh, your kids are lovely." Well, that's just, you know what? I'm fine. No problems at all. I'm not linked. The other thing is, this is what this world has done to us, right? Money. Money's terrible. We can't live with it, and we can't live without it.
Yeah.
Too much of it's not good. Not enough of it's not good. In the middle, sometimes there's enough, sometimes it's not. Money's a despicable thing, really. But our society can't operate without it. So there's no point carrying on about that. I just think you got to understand what's enough. The thing I know about myself, I'm simple. I got simple ideas about what I need. You know, that's as simple as, you know, I got a couple of really good mates. I go and have a few beers with them, sit around the shed. That's enough for me. As long as my wife and my kids are happy doing what they're doing, I've provided for them and they're right, and they've had their schooling and this and that and all the rest of it. Well, that's it, and I'm fine. I'm not trying to, you know, build an empire or anything like that. I work like I'm building one, but only because I love doing that. I love being productive and working towards something, and where it takes me, it takes me. But I'm satisfied within myself with the things that I've achieved thus far in my life. I'm going to keep pushing till the day I can't stand up, because I just love to work. I love it. And success for me will always be measured principally on how my family are going.
That's a great way to end our conversation, Shane. Thank you so much. I really am very grateful, and you've shared or told me some wonderful things, and it's really good to have this conversation, and especially around mental health. And, you know, I love that you're so open about making sure that people talk about their problems, and but, you know, having a bit of humour too. Like, humour's so important, isn't it, in life?
Absolutely.
And,
And like, you know what? Here's an interesting thing, because I've had this happen to me with a really good mate not so long ago. He got diagnosed with a terrible prognosis of cancer, right? Terrible, and it's not going to end. It's going to end him, right? Relatively young and all the rest of it. And then, you know, one of the great things about being a rugby league player is that, and you never think this at the time, but because we're people's heroes, if you like.
Yeah, well, you are.
We get the privilege, if you call it that. I didn't feel like it at the time. We get to go and see people who are on their deathbeds and stuff like that because they just want to. And kids who are crook and who are dying, who are not going to live. And then kids who have profound disability but fight on. I got quite a number of examples of people I've become friends with. That perspective has allowed me such great. Now, I've gone off on a tangent, but what we're talking about in terms of being happy with your life. It's a lot easier to be happy with your life when you realise how good your life is, and that's what I am lucky enough to be reminded of. And we all get it from time to time. But the human condition, as you would appreciate, the reason that we can lose the people who are dearest to us and yet still live is because we're designed for it. Because we're all, you know, we're living and we're dying. What we do in between is, you know, up to us and all the rest of it. But I think if we always remind ourselves that just over here and not that far away, it stops for us all. So do your best, but don't get too wrapped up in it, because it's not lasting forever. Whatever it is, good or bad, is not going to last forever.
Thank you, Sean.
It's been my pleasure.
Very,
Thank
very
you for
much.
having me.
Really appreciate it.